Hello again. Welcome to our study. The book of Matthew is where we are at. This is chapter number 2. It's good to have you with us. Before we go any farther in this book, we always go to prayer. Father, once again, thank you for your word. Thank you for what it means to us and what it does for us. Bless us in our endeavors to not only read it, but to apply it to our lives so that we can serve you until that day you call us home, and we'll give you praise in Jesus' name. Book of Matthew, chapter number 2. Verse 1. Now when Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, in the days of Herod the king, behold, there came wise men from the east to Jerusalem, saying, Where is he that is born King of the Jews? For we have seen his star in the east, and are come to worship him. When Herod the king had heard these things, he was troubled, and all Jerusalem with him. When he had gathered all the chief priests and scribes of the people together, he demanded of them where Christ should be born. Okay, the wise men that is mentioned here are called the Magi, and they came from ancient Persia. These ministers of Zoroaster, if you will, are called like that in ancient Persian Empire. It is then possible that these wise men were wise, maybe even experts of magical arts, and even more likely they were scientists or educated men. They dabbled in the occult, if you will. Like the scribes for Hebrews, the philosophers for the Greeks, and the sages for the Latins. These were very intelligent men, very powerful, very well funded, and very well venerated in their society. So when they showed up, there was a problem. The Magi were a hereditary sect of Persian kingmakers, politically regarded and military capable of taking down any king and putting up another in its place. They were powerful, wealthy, and well regarded in their own land. They were a force that King Herod did not want to deal with. Herod, who was not a Jew, this is interesting, he was appointed Jew. He was an Idumean. He was not a Jew, and he was appointed king of over Israel. And man, that incensed the Jews to no end, to the point where it took years. Some scholars say 3 years before he had the guts to show himself in Jerusalem. But he was Herod, not a Jew. He was an Idumean, and he was appointed by Rome as king of Israel. And what we find, these wise men showing up scared him to death. You say Herod was not in good terms with Rome, and it furthered his fears. So here he's got these Persian kingmakers coming into his land. He's got Rome that doesn't like him. Rome banished him to Israel and said, here, you go there. Just stay there and don't cause any problems. And you see, when he did, well, Rome didn't act very kindly to those that caused them any type of issue. So now you've got this hereditary sect of Persian kingmakers that are in Israel. It's no wonder they were afraid. No wonder Herod was afraid. He was troubled, and all Jerusalem with him. You see, the fear of all Jerusalem and King Herod, it was justified. These Magi could have initiated a war with Rome, as the Parthian Empire from which they came was never defeated by Rome. And of course, if they went to war with Rome, guess who's in the middle? Israel. Continuing verse number 5, and they said unto him, In Bethlehem of Judea, for thus it is written by the prophet, And thou, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, art not thou among the princes of Judah, for out of thee shall come a governor that shall rule my people Israel. And Herod, when he had privily called the wise men, inquired of them diligently what time the star appeared. And he sent them to Bethlehem, and said, Go and search diligently for the young child, and when ye have found him, bring me word that I may come and worship him also. Well, we take that verse there out of Micah chapter 5, Old Testament, verse number 2. But thou, Bethlehem Ephrathah, though thou be a little among the thousands of Judah, yet out of thee shall come forth unto me, that is to be a ruler in Israel, whose going forth have been old and from everlasting. Well, Herod took all possible means to obtain accurate information respecting this child, that he might be sure of destroying him. He not only ascertained the probable time of his birth and the place where he would be born, but he sent the wise men that they might actually see him and bring him word. All this might look suspicious if he had not clothed it with this appearance of religion, which he had absolutely no intentions of fulfilling. Some historical sources claim that Herod killed 14,000 infants in Jerusalem. that might be elevated, but nonetheless, this was not somebody you wanted to mess with. He was a very, very evil, bloodletting man. Continuing verse number 9, and when they heard the king, they departed, and lo, the star which they saw in the east went before them till it came and stood over where the young child was. When they saw the star, they rejoiced with exceeding great joy. And they were come into the house. They saw the young child with Mary his mother, and fell down and worshipped him. And when they opened their treasures, they presented unto him gifts, gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And being warned of God in a dream that they should not return to Herod, they departed in their own country another way. It may have been some 2 years or longer before the wise men actually came to see Jesus, for he was in a house and not in the original place of his nativity. So more than likely they did not see him in the feeding trough or the manger as we understand it. Could have been some time later. Well, looking at these gifts were presented to him as king of the Jews. And this is what bothered Herod, because he realized a child could take him out very easily and put the child in, especially these Persian kingmakers. So because they supposed he was to be a distinguished prince of conqueror, they would have honored him, this rightful king, as Herod was not a rightful king. It was customary in those days in the East to show respect for persons of distinction by making presents or giving presents or offerings of this kind. Well, frankincense, often burned, it symbolized prayer rising to the heavens with smoke, while myrrh was often used as an embalming or a fluid that symbolized death. Now, scholars affirm that frankincense was presented to the baby Jesus to symbolize his later role as high priest for believers, while myrrh symbolized his eventual death and burial. Well, gold? Well, gold is fit for, a king. Verse 13. And when they were departed, behold, the angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream, saying, Arise, and take the young child and his mother, and flee into Egypt, and be there until I bring thee word. For Herod will seek the young child to destroy him. And when he arose, he took the young child and his mother by night and departed into Egypt, and was there until the death of Herod, that it might be fulfilled, which was spoken by the Lord of the prophets, saying, Out of Egypt have I called my son. Well, historians believe that King Herod the Great died in 4 BC based on several different sources. We're looking at verse number 16. Then Herod, when he saw that he was mocked of the wise men, and was exceeding wroth, and sent forth and slew all the children that were in Bethlehem under the coast thereof, from 2 years old and under, according to the time he had diligently required the wise men. Then was fulfilled that was spoken by Jeremiah the prophet, saying, In Ramah was there a voice heard, lamentation and weeping, and great mourning, Rachel weeping for her children, and would not be comforted, because they are not. Now Jeremiah writes this in chapter 31, verse number 15. Thus saith the Lord, the voice was heard in Ramah, lamentation and bitter weeping, Rachel weeping for her children, refusing to be comforted for her children because they were not. And this is a reference to Rachel, the wife of Jacob. Her lineage had died, and that's the reason that the scriptures say that she was weeping. Verse 19, but when Herod was dead, behold, the angel of the Lord appeared in a dream to Joseph in Egypt, saying, Arise, take the young child his mother, and go into the land of Israel, for they are dead which sought the young child's life. And he arose and took the young child and his mother, and came into the land of Israel. Well, they are dead who sought to kill. Well, this either refers to Herod alone, and is not uncommon, using the plural member for the singular, or it may be referred to Herod and his son Antipas. He was the same cruel disposition that his father had, and it was to put to death by his father 5 days before his own death. This was something special. This guy was really, really bad news. He had numerous family members killed if he thought they were conspiring against him. 3 of Herod's sons were put to death, and his brother only escaped death by dying himself, including one of his wives, Miriam, her 2 sons, her brother, her grandfather, and her mother. When Herod finally died in 4 BC, 2 other sons had some claim to the throne. It's no wonder the Jews found it atrocious that this man would be king of Israel. He was a man that it was said it was actually safer to be a dog in the house of Herod than to be one of his own children. He was a man that this time was very sickly, disease-ridden, and Rome didn't want him. Israel hated him. His own family conspiring against him. Nonetheless, Herod died somewhere around 4 BC, and he went to wherever his place is today. Continuing, verse 22. But when he heard that Archelaus did reign in Judea in the room of his father Herod, he was afraid to go there. Notwithstanding, being warned of God in a dream, he turned aside into the parts of Galilee. And he came and dwelt in a city called Nazareth, that it might be fulfilled which was spoken by the prophets. He should be called a Nazarene. Well, Archelaus possessed a cruel and tyrannical disposition, just like his father. And one of the Passovers, he caused 3,000 of the people to be put to death in the temple city for his crimes. After he had reigned 9 years, he was banished by Augustus, the Roman emperor, to Gaul, where he died. Knowing his character and fearing that he would not be safe, Joseph hesitated about going there and was directed by God to go to Galilee. This is a place of safety. And what we understand from this chapter, Jesus is safe as a direct result of God's intervention. Joseph listening to the voice of the Lord, as we all should. Well, that will conclude this chapter. We'll pick this up on chapter number 3. Be blessed, be safe. Yeah, know you are loved. We'll see you on the next one.